You might think that the life of the Egyptian royals was full of comfort and prosperity and without any worries. But sitting in the shade, exploring the city, and being fanned by servants was only a small part of their daily lives, and most of their time was extremely busy. The royal family of ancient Egypt was very busy and active in carrying out their royal duties. Of course, this position and work duties also had very sweet benefits for them, such as money, power, food, and servants at their disposal. In this video, we will explore what the daily life of an Egyptian royal was really like and what would have happened to you if you were in their place. But before starting this journey through time, I ask you to support the video with a like if you enjoyed watching it, and subscribe to the channel to be notified of the next videos of the channel. So now it's time to move along the Nile and enter the life of a royal member in ancient Egypt. From about 3150 BC to 30 BC, Egypt was ruled by kings and queens called pharaohs. In addition to drinking wine and feasting on royal food, they spent their days managing the religious, economic, cultural, and political affairs of Egypt. Most of the waking hours of the pharaohs were spent among different people. So if you are an introvert and a loner, I must say that as an Egyptian royal, you did not have a moment to yourself. These entourages included members of the royal court, such as government officials, family members, selected servants, and royal guards. Pharaohs usually chose these people around them themselves, and they usually gave this special position and role as a reward to their friends and relatives. Being part of the pharaoh's entourage was a great opportunity that came with power, prestige, and many other benefits. So, contrary to what many might think, nepotism is not a modern phenomenon at all. Have you ever thought to yourself, after bathing and dressing, how hard it was, and wished a servant could do all this for you? Well, if you were an Egyptian pharaoh, you would be lucky. After waking up, the pharaohs would be met by servants who would prepare them for the day. These servants would approach the pharaoh, who probably had very bad breath in the morning, and even wash him. Some rulers liked to perfume themselves with fragrant oils to emphasize their high status. And considering that they lived more than 1,000 years before the invention of deodorant, this was not a bad idea at all. After bathing, a team of hairdressers who were specialized in various fields, from sandals to wigs, would prepare the pharaoh's attire and appearance, which must have been quite a spectacle. The Egyptian royal family was never seen without this ultimate and luxurious accessory. Wigs were so important in ancient Egypt that there were specific rules that determined who could and could not wear a wig. Slaves were not allowed to wear a wig by law, and the higher the social status of the person, the better the quality of the wig. Royal wigs were the most elaborate and luxurious, sometimes with gold and silver threads. Given the intense heat of ancient Egypt, these wigs were likely to be very sweaty and smelly. But fake hair wasn't just for the quiff. Pharaohs sometimes wore fake beards for special occasions. These fake beards were a symbol of the power of being a pharaoh and a sign that they were living gods on earth. With great power came great responsibility, and that meant back-to-back meetings. According to the Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, all of the pharaoh's work was planned according to specific rules and orders. These rules covered not only administrative activities, but also how they spent their time and even what they ate. Of course, the accuracy of this statement is debatable. According to Egyptologist Adolf Erman, Diodorus's vision of a perfectly orderly day was more of an ideal than a reality. That is, with all the power in their hands, it was unthinkable that they would cancel a meeting or two against their schedule. However, the pharaohs had religious and judicial duties, such as attending ceremonies and judging various matters and issuing decrees, which they had to perform every day. Their daily schedules were likely well organized to manage the volume of work they were expected to do.
If you are not an early riser, this part of the life of a pharaoh will be very difficult for you. Pharaohs would immediately get up in the morning and manage those affairs with a group of officials. Mornings were usually spent meeting guests and officials and resolving urgent problems, and this was not optional. According to Diodorus, these measures were absolutely mandatory and obligatory. Imagine having an office meeting every morning in a world where coffee had not yet been invented. It must have been really difficult. The pharaohs may not have had luxury cars, but that doesn't mean they traveled without ceremony. Their means of transportation were palanquins that were placed on long wooden poles that servants would lift and carry. Whenever the pharaohs left the palace, they would travel in these chairs and on the shoulders of servants. Royal fans also provided air conditioning and were responsible for keeping the pharaohs cool. It is said that these fan bearers had a close personal relationship with the pharaoh and may even have been part of the pharaoh's personal bodyguards. And it seems that this fanning was a good way to strengthen their muscles and keep their bodies ready to protect the pharaoh. The pharaohs were not only the kings of Egypt, but also claimed to have divine power and were intermediaries between humans and the gods. Because of this magical aspect of their title, their days were filled with religious duties, such as electing and appointing important religious officials, ordering the construction of temples, and participating in ceremonies. According to the Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, pharaohs would go to the temple daily to worship and offer sacrifices to the gods. These sacrifices were probably symbolic, and their purpose was to maintain order in the kingdom. Even if pharaohs did not always physically attend religious ceremonies, the presence of their statues in the temples ensured that they were at least symbolically present. Have you ever wished you could skip a meeting and just send your statue instead? Life in the royal family had its own advantages. While ordinary Egyptians mostly lived on bread, beer, vegetables, and fish, the pharaohs enjoyed a very luxurious diet. Royal feasts might include dishes such as goose, beef, and fresh fruits such as dates and figs. The main drink of the royal court was wine, which was out of reach for most Egyptians. So it seems that the royal family must have had a really good time, drinking a little wine and enjoying the taste of beef. While most ancient Egyptians were monogamous, kings were allowed to have multiple wives, and they loved to flaunt their power. Male pharaohs had one main wife, or royal concubine, who held the highest position among their wives, as well as a large number of lesser wives, concubines, and harem women. According to British author and archaeologist Charlotte Watt, these harems were a reflection of the king's wealth. In other words, the larger the harem, the wealthier the pharaoh seemed. Of course, life in a harem was not always pleasant, especially since the pharaoh could request a visit from any of his wives every night, and they had no autonomy in their lives. These relationships almost guaranteed that the pharaohs would have many children. For example, Ramses II had over 100 children by his wives and concubines. Given that his three-figure number of children lived in the separate part of the palace, it can be said that he was not a close and intimate father to his children. Of course, they had access to teachers and nurses who taught and cared for them. Pharaohs sometimes spent their time walking around the city, which attracted large crowds who gathered to watch them.
Since the pharaohs decided where and how temples were built, they may have visited various construction sites. Although all pharaohs invested in construction projects, but among them, Ramses II was the most prolific builder. He used his construction projects as a form of advertising to demonstrate his power. Pharaohs were both gods and builders of construction projects, a combination of power that sometimes led to unhealthy and selfish leadership. Only the royal family was allowed to hunt large animals, such as lions. Although sometimes the pharaohs allowed other skilled athletes to participate in these hunts. Hunting was not a necessity for them, since as kings they had everything they needed, whenever they needed it. But hunting was considered a form of entertainment for the king and his court, and they did not even have to be particularly skilled in the field of hunting. Sometimes a professional hunter would catch an animal in advance and release it in time for the king to kill it. This was cheating, but if you were a pharaoh, cheating was okay. But hunting was not just a way to relax after a busy day. Pharaohs used royal hunting as an opportunity to demonstrate their power and, as scholar Peter Lacavera puts it, their mastery over the natural world. Even the king in the Temple of Amun seems to have been no exception. His tomb depicts scenes of the young king returning from an ostrich hunt. Pharaohs may have presented themselves as divine beings, but they were mortal and weak like other humans. In fact, many of them probably had serious health problems. The intermarriage and close kinship ties that were practiced to keep their bloodline pure caused many genetic problems in them. For example, Takanat Amun probably suffered from genetic problems that caused disabilities such as a limp. Their heavy diet also had its own negative effects on their health. Pharaohs could be overweight, and many of them suffered from heart disease. For example, some commanders had diabetes and were very obese. These serious health problems linked to diet ironically contradicted Diodorus's claim that the royal family's diet was so carefully planned that it seemed as if the best doctors had prepared it to keep them healthy. Do you think your family has a lot of problems? If so, try putting yourself in the shoes of an Egyptian pharaoh. Sometimes a pharaoh's position and power were challenged by members of his own family. For example, in 1155 BC, Ramses III was assassinated as a result of a plot known as the Harem Plot. In this incident, one of his wives, Tia, may have masterminded the entire plot to bring her son to power. And even some other pharaohs struggled with family members during their reigns. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, consolidated her power by waging internal strife with her younger brother and husband in 48 BC. The lives of the pharaohs of ancient Egypt were certainly full of colorful and exciting moments. From busy workdays to lively entertainment, there was never a dull moment for these wig-clad pharaohs and their entourage. But what do you think about the lives of the pharaohs of ancient Egypt? Write your thoughts in the comments, and if you've been with us so far, don't forget to like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, press the subscribe button now. Thank you.